Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Duwane Adams, and I've had Duwane on before, and he's always a very popular guest. Duwane, it looks like you've been doing a lot of hunting. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing real good, thank God. I just come off of 5 days of Coues Deer hunting today, the day you called.
That's fantastic. You're on the road to 1,000, right?
I'm on the road to 1,000. It's kind of interesting you say that. I killed 504 bucks now as of
That's awesome.
This hunt. Yes.
That's fantastic. That is just amazing, and still just going at it as strong as ever. I really appreciate that about you. The passion that you have for hunting is awesome, and I want to talk about deer, the Kaibab, and talk about these Coues deer. But before we get into that, you typically guide up in Unit 1 and have for many, many years for the archery, and whether it's the early rifle or the muzzleloader hunt up there in Unit 1. How was it up there for the elk hunt in Arizona for Unit 1 this year? How was the year up there?
We had a great year. We had 5 clients, and they all killed bulls, thank God, on the archery season. We did really well, Jay. We've seen a lot of good bulls that were in the caliber between 330 and about 360, and we got after several bulls, in that 370, 380 range, and we were lucky enough to kill one of them. We killed one bull, and the other clients killed the bulls at 330s to 350s.
That's always a good hunt. Was the bugling any better or any worse, or pretty much the same as always in Unit 1? It's typically known as a unit that the elk bugle pretty good. How was it this year?
Well, as you know, Jay, because you're a world-renowned elk hunter, they had the season a week later, and it was unbelievable. From the time we got there at the 15th of September to the end of the season, they were screaming their guts out. Thank God. We had a lot of activity bugling, and it sure makes it a lot more fun.
By the time the archery hunt was, getting over and it was rolling into I forget if it was muzzleloader or early rifle this year, were the bulls broken up, or did they stay fairly well intact this year?
Well, they weren't broken, and thank God they weren't. I had a client that out of Amarillo hunted with me, and we let a lot of bulls go for the first 3 days, trying to kill that magic bull, and then on the 4th day we killed a bull that was right at 370, and just a great big pretty bull, and the hunter said Frank Lopez guided it and just did a great job. He's probably he is absolutely my best elk guide by far, and has been working with me for 35 years. Him and his brother Al Lopez, they're both just wonderful, wonderful guys, and he guided that bull, and it was a 370 bull.
Now, Duwane, Unit 1 has a lot of thick country. Of course, the fire came through there and opened that up. In your opinion, that's kind of played right into your wheelhouse of being, one of the original guys that, put 15s on a tripod and really liked the glass. How much have you seen the unit change from when you used to hunt it, say, when it had tons of timber, and now that the burn went through, how has it changed, and has it in essence played right into your hand?
Oh, Lord, yes. And you couldn't glass up there to save your life if no way in the world you did very well, because there wasn't a lot of glassing places, and the elk were back in the trees. But when you burn 500,000 acres up, I mean, you've got open hills after open hills, and it just enabled that aspen growth to explode, and that's why the elk has exploded up there. There's just so much feed, and you could glass those elk early in the late season. It's changed the whole dynamics of every aspect of Unit 1 and in 27 both. And it's a lot like 3A and 3C, how that's changed with that fire they had there. You can see now.
Yeah. Normally when we have fires like that, the elk just flock in there on that new burn. Obviously that burn isn't new, but didn't they plant some rye or something as well. I heard they did. I haven't been up there, so I'm just curious from a guy on the ground. Did the Forest Service come in and do some planting?
I think they did almost $600,000 worth, if I'm correct. I talked to the Forest Service folks up there, and they flew it out of Springerville, and they flew it with crop duster type planes and with a slurry, and they dumped that on the ground. And the first year, you could see that, like, it looked like barley or wheat. I don't know what it was, but it's big clusters of it, and the elk were gorging themselves on it. But the reason they did it wasn't for the animals, it was for erosion, or they were scared to death that it was going to flash flood, is what they told me. And I think that's probably was right, but it helped the elk in every aspect. But the food is just unbelievable up there. I think Unit 1 and 27 is still, probably the rest of my life will be just premier units. Yeah,
for sure. Duwane, have you run into any, or do you hear those wolves up there in that country? I haven't been up there lately, and I'm hearing reports that people are seeing more and more wolves up there.
We see them about every year. We do, and I've not had any problems with them, thank God. But we do see them, and we do hear them. But I personally have not witnessed them kill an elk, but I'm sure they do. But I haven't seen it or seen a resemblance of it. But they've got to be eating something, so they probably are eating elk up there. But I've not seen it, Jay.
Yeah. So with Unit 1 burning, I've got to think the late hunt success rate has gone up. And have you noticed any decline in quality of elk as far as bulls? Or do you feel like Unit 1 antler growth, it's just as strong as ever, age class, and seeing good bulls, or do you notice that it has declined a little bit?
Well, you said something earlier. You asked me about the busted horns. That's where the problem is. On the late season, those elk are busted. I just had 4 elk hunters on the late season. Some of my guides took them up there, and every bull we killed was busted, and every bull that we let go was busted. And I'd stay in a day contact with those guys while I was Coues deer hunting, and they'd tell me, Duwane, we've seen a 330 or 340 bull today, but 3 of the points were gone, and yakety yak, so it was trying to find a bull that was not busted up bad, but every one they shot, Jay, was busted.
I think that's one of those things that as Arizona elk hunters, we're kind of spoiled because we love having that intense rut and having those elk bugle and just having that chaos. But when you've got as many bulls as we do, competition is fierce, and those bulls tend to really fight. And, it's a double-edged sword, and then our late hunts are not near as good as, maybe some of the other states where they don't ever shoot a broken bull. But I guess if I had to choose, I'd rather have that intense rut and have that chaos that we all have grown to love, for sure.
I think you're 100% right. There's a lot of units. I tell guys that the bull-cow ratio is not quite as strong, so the bulls have a tendency to carry their horns better. But there's a lot of bulls in Unit 1, so they're fighting. And something I realized, they're fighting way after that I would consider the rut being over, but apparently it's not over because they're busted all to heck by the time the November late rifle season comes around. I mean, there's some big bulls with the whole beams gone.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on in October that, typically you've been up there for 30 or 40 days, and maybe you get a chance to go back home and you get that second or third cycle, and there seems like there's quite a bit of intensity, because I'll agree with you. I've seen it in cases where, you kind of leave into the archery or even those early rifle hunts, and a few bulls are broken here and there, and then all of a sudden every bull on the late hunts broke. I mean, they've got to be breaking them between, the last time you saw them. So it shows me that there's, still some intensity going on in October on those second cycles. Duwane, you spent time up on the Kaibab this year, as always. how many years have you been going up, and how would you say the season was up there on the plateau?
I'm there 38 years this year guiding at the Kaibab, and I've been there just about every season, early and late. Sometimes I can't stay the whole season. Sometimes I spend half the season on the early, but I've been there on just about every late season they've had on the east or west side. And this year was a little bit different than most years that we get there. There was a very amount of lack of water, and it's the first time in my life of guiding up there that the Game and Fish had been hauling water for 3 weeks before the season, and Todd Buck, a game warden up there, is doing a great job, because I talked to him, and they had trucks and trailers, and they had every kind of equipment that you can imagine, filling them up, hauling to those drinkers, because they had not got a drop of water since August, he said.
Wow.
And all of the drinkers, Jay, were on top. 5 drinkers that I went to were empty, and they were trying to fill them up, and I couldn't believe why they're empty, but finally I realized why. The deer were drinking them to death. I mean, they'd put 500 gallons in there, and there'd be 100 deer drinking around the thing, and within a couple of days it was empty. So, I mean, they were fighting a real battle, and the deer started to migrate, and they were all the way down to Jump Up and all the way to the highway on top, so it spread the deer out so thin that, thank God, we've hunted there so many years that we just kept hitting hole after hole after hole, and we had 10 clients, and we killed 10 bucks, and we killed 1 buck that was 200 inches. And I mentioned Frank Lopez and Al Lopez. Well, Al Lopez's boy, Eric Lopez, guided for me this year, and he guided the buck that was 200 inches, and we killed it set in water. That's exactly how we killed it.
Really? Wow. So I would think if it's really dry, it would congregate the deer, but what you're saying is it was so dry that the deer were spread out all over the place?
Well, it's just the opposite of what I would thought, too. What I think happened is those drinkers dried up on top, and the deer just started falling off to the next drinkers down. That's the only thing that I can surmise out of the whole darn thing, because there was lots of drinkers dry, all the tanks were dry, and I think those deer just started falling down automatically to the next water, which was mid-range around Middle Mountain and in the Oaks, and they just kept going all the way to Jump Up. One of the guys went down to Jump Up. He said there's hundreds of deer down there. I couldn't believe it. I went down there the next day. There was deer all over down there. So when you have deer from Jump Up all the way to the top of the highway, there's not that many numbers, so that spreads those deer thin.
Yeah, as far across the board with all the other hunters up there, was success fairly normal, or would you say it was up or down this year across the board, not just in your camp?
I think it was about normal, to be honest with you. I know they killed 2 or 3 bucks in the 220s and 230s. I got that out of the Game and Fish check station. That there was a lady that killed a gigantic buck, and a couple other guys that killed bucks of just unbelievable magnitude. On the early season, they usually don't kill those kind of deer on the early season, but they kill them in the mid-range, down around the tanks, instead of those deer staying up high. So I really believe that they were thirsty, and they just started dropping down to the next level.
Yeah, for sure. So you just got off a Coues Deer hunt. I assume it was this season, that kind of the first part of December season that you just got off of?
I did, and I have some hunters that's hunted with me. The gentleman that I just guided just killed his 21st buck with me. He's killed 21 bucks with me.
That is incredible. And
he's been hunting with me for over 30 years, and he's been a great friend. He's a doctor out of Las Vegas, and he's the interesting thing, and he's 74 years old, and I'm 63, and we've just putted around there and found buck after buck after buck, and just kept letting them go. And then finally, he killed a nice buck yesterday, and he's killed 2 Boone and Crockett bucks with me over the years. But, 74 years old and still out there chasing Coues deer, you got to give him a lot of kudos for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really neat story. Duwane, what are you seeing out there as far as it's obviously dry in the Coues deer woods as well? I've been getting a few sporadic reports of guys saying they're seeing bucks chasing does, and I'm curious if you saw any of that, and I wonder if it has anything to do with it being as dry as it is, congregating them around water, or they may be interacting a little bit more, or did you not see any pre-rut activity?
I did see that yesterday. I seen about an 85-inch deer chasing a doe all over a hill, and I told Doc, I said, look at that. I said, look at that. I mean, he chased that doe up one side and down the other and all around, just like they would in December and January. But I will say this, Jay, we found all the deer around water. And I don't mean like drinking around water, but if I got away from that water, I did not find the numbers. It was several canyons that I'm hunting. The first day, I'd go in there like normal, and I found no deer. I didn't find no bucks, no does, no fawns. And after about an hour, I told Doc, we got to move. I said, they're not here, and I don't know why, but they're not. Well, about 10 o'clock, I went over to another canyon, and I know that there's a spring there, and there was 47 deer in that canyon, and the light went on. I said, holy mackerel, they're around this water. We went to that little spring, and it looked like Africa. They had stomped it to death, and they were drinking it. And so I just stayed around that area there and kept looking, and that's where we killed the bucks.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but, I mean, even as much experience as you have, you go to those canyons where there's puddles down there in the bottom of those canyons, but, I mean, 100 and some days without moisture and such, I mean, I think it seems as though this stretch of with no rain is like, I mean, one of the longest that I can remember, and, with these mid-December hunts coming up, it does, here in Phoenix at least, there's, 7-day forecast I was looking at today, actually out the 10-day, and there's nothing even in sight. Would you encourage people that have these mid-December tags to make sure that they're hunting around perennial water, where not just canyons where they're used to water being in, because they're flat out dry, but, stick to those places where there's some dirt tanks and where they know that there's water, they'll find deer?
Listen, I just told you a minute ago, and you know this because you're a good Coues deer hunter as well. When a buck chases a doe up and down a hill for 30 minutes all around, sooner or later they got to get a drink, and it's really that simple. So when they're chasing them deer, and in that area like that, if you're around water, those deer have had to migrate there. I mean, I'm talking about probably early November. They had to move over there because, Jay, we haven't had a drop since August, just like the Kaibab and up on Unit 1, and it's taken a toll. There was dirt tank after dirt tank that I looked at down south. They were empty. And when I was scouting down there early September, late September after the elk hunt, all those tanks had water. And so they're gone. There's zero water at it, and those deer have had to go get a drink someplace.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that worries me about that is, especially in our Coues deer woods out there, is when they get congregated around water, I feel like they're really subject to, predators, lions being able to, they're not stupid either, and be able to, hone in on those deer. And I hope we can get some moisture soon, because they sure seem like sitting ducks, not only to hunters, but to the predators out there as well. Did you guys see any lions or anything in this last trip?
I was just getting ready to tell you about that. One of the tanks that we checked, it looked like Africa. The deer had beat to death. It also had several tracks of lions. And my son-in-law, Nick Tabaka, he said, look at that, Duwane. I said, Nick, there was 7 or 8 different lion tracks there, and they were different size, so it was probably a female with cubs, half-grown or whatever. And I called Nick, in fact, he had called Andy Knowlton, a lion hunter down there, and we told him exactly where that tank was and the lion sign that we had seen there. and so hopefully he gets after those lions with a hunter.
Yeah, for sure. It's I really hope we can get some moisture. So looking forward, let's say that for those people out there with tags in their pocket, let's say, Duwane, that really, between now and the end of the year, we don't get many storms. Not only focusing on water, but are you expecting these deer to be a little more ruddy, or would you think they're in drought conditions and maybe the does won't cycle? What's your thoughts on that? Because I feel like it could go either way.
Well, let me back up a minute. They didn't have an acorn crop in the Kaibab, and we did not have an acorn crop in the Catalinas or any of the units that I'm looking at, because I'd walk up to those trees. So the normal deer that were feeding around the acorns, they're not there, Jay. There's no food for those deer in that acorn area. So they drop. The deer's going to drop down into the cactus and feed on the barrel cactus tops and the cholla patches and stuff like that. We started hunting some of that country as well down there, and I think those deer are doing a little better, because we seen almost all the barrel cactuses were just, you could see they were being ate, and we watched several does and several bucks just eating those cholla patches, eating those little balls off there. So I think those deer in the desert are getting some moisture out of the cactus. But when you get back up in the mountains, like when we hunt high sometimes, those deer are struggling up there because there's literally not the food, and I watched them just eat grass, long yellow grass, and pick it, and just chew it, eat it in like a piece of spaghetti. And I told my son-in-law, I said, that's not normal, Nick. I said, that's the first time I've really seen those deer just stay in that yellow grass and eat it instead of just trying to pick around and pick up some of the different forbs. So I think that the drought is really starting to pay bad dividends for us as hunters.
Yeah, it's a little bit alarming for sure. So what you're saying is normally you see them, you don't see them grazing on grass. You see them eating browse, but you're thinking that because of the lack of moisture, the browse, the forbs were not there, so they're forced to, eat some of that grama grass and some of that stuff that they really don't like, but they have to eat something.
That's exactly what I've seen. Not only did I see one deer, I've probably seen 50 deer. They were doing the exact same thing, picking off that grass that's 12, 14, 16 inches long, and just picking it up and chewing it and chewing it all the way in. And I've seen them do that before, but not in the numbers that I see now. Usually they're picking on ocotillo leaves, and they're picking on different types of cactuses, or especially if the acorns hit the ground, those deer just gorge themselves eating those acorns. But there's zero acorns. For whatever reason, we did not have an acorn anywhere in the state, and it's made a big difference.
Duwane, those acorns, for the people out there listening, do you feel like that's a crop, from our oaks that comes every year, or is it cyclical, or is it one of those that, every couple of years it's stronger than others, but every year there's some sort of crop, and it sounds like you're saying there's zero crop, like no acorns at all.
I didn't see any, Jay, and I looked at hundreds of trees from the Kaibab down to the Coues Deer, and I never found an acorn. And I do think that there's generally some acorns in some places and maybe not as many in other places. I mean, I've seen that a lot. There's different types of acorns out there, the scrub, and then you've got the trees, and you've got all different things, but none of them had any kind of, and I think that the deer are struggling. A lot of places that I hunted, Jay, that I have killed lots of bucks in, I never seen a deer in. Not a doe, a fawn, and the droppings weren't there, and it didn't take me very long to realize, me and the guys who worked with me, we got to change our taxis because they're not here. And so that's when we started going to the water.
You talk about cholla cactus, and I assume you're talking about the staghorn cholla with the little yellow buds on it, and if you look at it, there's the teddy bear or the jumping cholla that falls off, but then I think you're talking about the staghorn cholla that looks more like a churro, like you'd eat at a county fair or something? You know,
No. I'm talking about the teddy bear. They like the ones you're talking about too, the staghorn cactus as well. But the fruit that I seen on the staghorn cactus, they have already gorged themselves on it. The ones that they could get to, it was all gone. The ones that were above that the deer couldn't get to, they were still there. So they've just about ate all of that's there. And so right now they're eating the teddy bear cholla. Those little balls is what they're eating. All those little tiny balls that hangs down, and that's we've seen a lot of deer just gorge themselves on those.
Okay, and so for me, it seems like I haven't been down in southern Arizona as of late. I've been in Colorado, but to me, they're going to eat all the staghorns first, and then they're going to go to the teddy bear. So when you see them eating that's telling me exactly what you're saying. That like they are in, they're very close to probably being in rough shape.
That's right. I think that's exactly right. This morning, I tried to help a 14-year-old boy kill a deer this morning. His dad guides for me, and we guided him this morning, and we found a cactus that you're talking about, and all of the fruit was just above, and it looked like he had went around and picked all the cactus that were around the thing, but above it, where the deer couldn't get to, you could see the tracks all the way around the cactus, and the light went on. I said, that's what they've done. They're just going from cactus to cactus and getting what they can get.
Very interesting. As far as the grass out there, the yellow grass in the areas you were hunting, was it also, could you really tell it was really droughty? I mean, had the cattle eaten it down, and was it just a dust bowl out there, or did the vegetation appear to be in decent shape?
No, it's in bad shape. It's in bad shape. It may be as in bad shape as I've seen in my lifetime, because just exactly what you said. It's been way over 100 days, and we haven't had any kind of real precipitation. And if we don't get some, we could be in a real trouble. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. I don't know about the cycles a doe will come in or don't come in. I don't have a clue about that. But I do know one thing, that they got to have a drink sooner or later. And sooner or later, right now they're running out of water.
Yeah. I would assume then the oaks kind of have that orange look to them, and everything, the mesquite, there's no mesquite. Everything looks dead, right? Pretty much.
Well, what happened is it looks like a lot of the oak trees are going into some like shock.
Like a dormant stage.
That's exactly what you're right about, how they turn orange and they start to drop leaves. But other ridges, it won't be that way. You can see it's still green, but you go the next ridge over, and they went into shock. So, and they're dropping the leaves already. And I was telling Doc, the hunter with me, I said that's nature telling that tree to go into survival mode, so it's dropping its leaves.
Yeah, for sure. And I would assume the ocotillos have 0 leaves as well, right?
That's correct. There are 0 leaves. There was no food there, and so again, I think these deer are struggling, and I think they're going to struggle until we get some real moisture. And I pray to God we get a bunch of snow and we get a bunch of real good rains here in the next few weeks, or who knows what's going to happen. I mean, the deer will survive, I know that, but maybe the fawns won't survive. I mean, there's a lot there that I don't know about, but I darn sure know that they've got to get some water pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think anybody out there listening that has tags in their pocket, or they're going to go out on those over-the-counter archery deer hunts that are coming up here this Friday, I believe, and or the archers that are going to go out January 1st. You heard it here from Duwane. I think really, really focus and hone in on water. I think it's, if you want a tactic, find glassing points, and Duwane, you weigh in on this, find glassing points where there's 2 or 3 water sources, in the canyon or in proximity, and you're probably going to find more deer. And don't go through the same thing that Duwane had to hunt for a day or so and figure it out. like immediately look at your topo maps and figure out where the perennial water is, where it's going to be, the wettest, and where those tanks where the deer have access to the most water, and you're going to be, probably a leg up going into it.
Jay, something else I was going to tell you. We glassed probably a 175, maybe a 180 mule deer. It had 22 does already and 4 satellite bucks. He was already rutting those does this early right now. And we watched it. I videotaped it. I videotaped the deer chasing the does and trying to run the smaller bucks off. This is early to me to be that kind of deer chasing those does like that. I mean, you generally don't see a deer like that till after Christmas and maybe early in January. And I don't know if the moisture's done it. I'm not going to act like I know, but I will say this. He had 22 does and 3 satellite bucks, and he was a darn nice buck chasing does.
One thing I would speculate, Duwane, curious your thoughts on it, is kind of we touched on it earlier, like when it is dry and they're forced to congregate in certain areas, it allows them to kind of bunch up. And when they bunch up, those bucks are kind of, typical males. They just kind of, they have one thing on their mind pretty much the whole time. And do you think that, biologically that the does are actually coming in, or do you think it's more that he's got a group there and he's kind of got them gathered up, and so he's acting ready?
I don't know, Jay. One thing you learn about me is I don't want to carry on something that I don't have a clue about. I don't know. It could be either one of them. It could be either way, but I do know that that's the earliest that I've seen him rut. That was 3 days ago. You think about on 3 days ago, that's the early part of December, and this buck was full-blown rut. He was chasing. His neck was swole up. He tore up 7 different trees while we were watching him with the does, and I mean, he had 22 does. He already had them gathered, and it might be because they're close to water. But I don't know, but maybe one of those does went into estrus because he was on one doe up the hill, down the hill. He was all over her for, until he literally went out of our eyesight. So, this is almost 2 to 3 weeks early.
Yeah, for sure. Duwane, looking forward, do you have any openings for these hunts coming up? If anybody needs a guide, do you have openings? And do you have hunters you're going to be with after Christmas or anything on these Coues Deer hunts, or what's your schedule?
We could take a rifled Coues Deer hunter, but archery, I thank the Lord Jesus, I'm booked up, Jay. I'm booked up for this year, and I'm starting to get booked up for next year, and thank God. But we could take our late rifle hunter if anybody's interested. We'd love to take them and try to kill them a monster buck. Right
on, man. Well, it's always great talking to you. It's always great getting that much experience and getting to kind of pick your brain and what have you. And I know you've been out on a hunt, so I'm gonna let you go. But I just appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared with us. And over the years, I've gone to many seminars of yours and read your book, and you're very, very well respected. And I love the passion you still have for hunting, and just wish you the best of success on all your hunts you have coming up, and congratulate you on your fall that you've had already.
Well, thank you very much. You always say very nice things, and God bless you as well. One thing I want to end it with, we did kill a 213 on the late hunt, and it was 33 inches wide, and it was rutting hard, and we did kill that on the late hunt. I had 4 hunters, and we killed 3 bucks over a 180, close to 190, and one that scored 213.
Wow, that's awesome. And that 213, was that on Kaibab, or was that on the 12B?
No, they're all on the Kaibab. All the bucks were killed on the Kaibab. Yes.
That's fantastic. That's is that the one? I'm looking at your Instagram page, and you're holding, and it's a tripod buck on its left side. It's got 3. Yeah, that's a beautiful buck.
Yeah, John Weiler guided that for me, and he's been guiding for me for 20 years. He's a firefighter out of Phoenix. Him and his brother Rick Weiler, they're both wonderful people, and he guided that buck from a gentleman out of Oregon. And I mean, it's a monster buck. I mean, anybody want to kill a buck like that in a lifetime?
It looks like it's got a ton of mass. Just a beautiful buck, nice and wide, big heavy beam, long beam buck. Encourage the listeners. You can check the show notes of this podcast, but you can go check it out on Duwane's Instagram page. That's DUWANE Adams Hunting, Duwane Adams Hunting. And then Duwane, why don't you also tell the listeners how they can reach you and how they can see more about you?
You bet. You can call me at 520-385-4995. Would love to call and talk to anybody. And I've been on Jay's podcast many times. A lot of guys have called, and I like to help people. I wish more outfitters would help people because we're all in this boat together. If we lose our rights, ain't nobody going to be hunting. So we all got to stay in the same boat and try to help folks. But give me a call, and my webpage is Arizona Big Game Hunting, and just give me a call, and I'd love to talk to you. I also wrote a book on Coues deer, and I got a book on mule deer, and I'd love to get that in your hands. I try to put as much information in there for top guides or beginners, so it would help everybody.
Well, I appreciate that, Duwane. God bless you, man, and knock them dead over the next couple of weeks, okay?
God bless you, Jay. You're a quality man. God bless you.
All right, buddy. Take care.